Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Sometimes we wear a symbol of who we are. Other times, it's just a symbol of terror. What comes to mind when you think of shadow people? If it's trepidation, settle yourselves in for a little story of scary symbolism that Doughboy420 likes to call the Hatman.
It all started when I was really little, I guess. For as long as I can remember, I have been haunted by terrifying horrors in the night. I would repeatedly wake up in the middle of the night, short of breath and with a heavy feeling within my core. That wasn't my only problem, though. They were also there. It wasn't always the same, though. Sometimes I would dream of a recognizable place, but an unrecognizable person. It feels like I should know them, like I've known them for a very long time, but they're completely unrecognizable to me. Everything aside from the situation is otherwise normal. A normal place and a normal, everyday person, but they're a stranger to me. Along with the confusion of the situation, there is an accompanying feeling, like an underlying layer beneath their skin, a hidden darkness that hides behind them, an uncomfortable feeling that they share with many other nighttime visitors. Sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, lungs tight, and I'm unable to breathe, I see other things. Things unseen in the natural world. Things that are not witnessed, but may always be present. These things share the same feeling of darkness that hid beneath the skin of my dreams. However, with them, it was a bit more straightforward and clear. In my room, they would appear as in many ways. At times, a large, humanoid, insect-like man, his eyes wide and piercing, with antennae protruding from his brow, his body devoid of all hair, completely smooth and almost matte black, always black. But his skin would still kind of shimmer in the darkness, clinging tightly to the muscles beneath it. I could see him standing at the foot of my bed, staring intently down upon me, silently waiting for something. But it was the feeling that terrified me. The discomforting feeling of extreme fear as this thing watched me as I laid there paralyzed and powerless. Other times, my eyes would shoot open within my paralyzed, unmoving skull. I would fight to sit up, but never was able to. I could only use my eyes and let them dart around the room. There, amongst my shelves and desk, I witnessed dark things, like asymmetrical and amorphous shadows that would twist and curl in upon themselves, creating new beastly images of themselves. They were things of complete darkness, taken shape, and they were the essence of the things I saw at night. At times, the amorphous shadows would fade to reveal full-formed figures, physical beings, short and tall, and would occasionally take the form of what appeared to be what most would call aliens. They're a pale gray color, slender bodies with long fingers and large heads. Their eyes large and almond-shaped, always black, black as coal, like the darkness that was within them and around them. They were akin to what most would call a gray alien, but they didn't feel like a physical being. I mean, it's hard to explain. They looked physical, but they always felt the same as the ever-present darkness that filled every instance of these visits in the night. However, most of the time, I would see what I would call the minions. They were the shadow people that appeared blacker than the black in the night. These things were so dark that they would actually stand out against the darkness in the room. They appeared as human, or rather the silhouette of a human, but they were not human at all, and most likely never were. They're not ghosts, at least not human ones anyway. There's something else, something worse. It's hard to explain the feeling within these things that I see. It's a seething. It's hateful. It's a feeling of evil. I call them minions because on occasion, they would not appear on their own. They would show up with one that usually stood behind them, watching them and me, kind of like their boss, like their foreman of fright. I might make jokes now, but in the heat of it, it's pretty damn terrifying. When this guy shows up, things are far worse. The other things feel like darkness without meaning, existing only to terrify me in the night. But the boss of the minions, the one I call the Hatman, he feels like he has a purpose, like he wants something from me. When he's there, I'm not just afraid, but I'm truly afraid for my life. He appears the same as the shadow minions that accompany him, a darkness blacker than black, but he always appears to be wearing a hat. Almost always a similar style hat, usually a thin brim, almost like a fedora. But it can vary from time to time. But it's the feeling that comes with him and the way in which he appears that always reveals who he is. He is the Hatman, and I've come to believe that he's here for my soul. I've sought medical attention on several occasions over the years. Doctors would usually blame it on things like sleep apnea or a sleep paralysis of sorts. I've even had one psychiatrist tell me it stemmed from childhood trauma, even though this started before I could even remember. I don't know what it is, or why I'm haunted by it. But I know it's real, and it's always been here. Once, after visiting the last doctor, I had a particularly bad visit from these extreme night terrors. It started in a dream. I saw a man with thick, caterpillar-like eyebrows that sat above deep-set brown eyes. He was wearing a dark-colored suit, nearly black or perhaps a deep navy blue. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me, watching me, almost staring through me. It was like he wasn't even there, just a hollow vessel for the dark thing that lay within him. Together, we stood in a large open field. Nothing could be seen in any direction, just a never-ending green field that met the embracing edges of a clear, blue sky. But suddenly, as the man looked through my eyes and into my soul, the sky began to crack and fall away behind him, revealing the darkened corners of my room. I was no longer in a dream, and it was as if the dream had just cracked and fallen away before my eyes, to show that I was awake and that my eyes were open, but my mind was still within the clutches of the dream world. It was then that I watched the strange man fade away into the blackest of the night to hail in the minions. This time, they didn't just taunt me. They didn't just poke and prod at me like terrifying annoyances, but instead, now, two of them held me down, gripping me tightly around my wrists and ankles, holding my already paralyzed body down onto my bed. I panicked and began to hyperventilate through the short, gasping breaths in which I was able to fight and force into my tightening lungs. And as I lay there, unable to move and shackled by the hands of the shadows, he appeared. The Hatman. This time, things were different with him. He felt more forceful and more violent than usual. Somehow, he had become even darker, and instead of standing in the back and letting his minions loose upon me, this time, he joined in with them. He approached me and reached out his hand. As he drew closer to me, the air grew colder within the room. His very presence was sucking the life out of the environment, and thus, me. I felt like I was going to die, like these would be my final, terrifying moments, as this thing steals my soul and leaves me for my family to find dead in the morning. It felt like his arm was inside my chest, his hand prying apart my ribcage in order to squeeze my heart into a rest, and as the Hatman attempted to end me, I watched as two of the shadow minions that held me down change before my very eyes. Their smooth, featureless black faces soon sprouted eyes that broke the surface of their faces like a bubbling up from the bottom of a pool of water. Large, red eyes bobbed up from the pool of darkness like oil, and these red eyes seemed to glow as they looked down upon me. Then, just as soon as it had all began, my body threw itself forward, and I sat up. And everything was normal, and the Hatman was gone, and his minions were no more. And this was a particularly bad experience, and it brought me onto the internet to see what I could find out about what was happening. I thought that maybe I wasn't alone. As it turns out, I'm not. Apparently, these things have been seen across the world, and the Hatman has haunted people of all creeds and colors. But it wasn't just the fact that the Hatman was everywhere, but it also made a connection to who, or rather what, he may be. I believe these things have been witnessed throughout history by many cultures, and they may have taken on different personas as deities or demons throughout history. There is Baron Samedi in Haitian voodoo, who would sometimes appear as a skeleton wearing a suit and a top hat, dressed all in black, in contrast to the pale white of his skull. The Hussein Chasa in old Korean mythology, who may have been portrayed as pale-skinned men wearing black robes and wide-rimmed black hats. And even the Shinigami-yama, or Enma in Japan and China, sometimes portrayed as an angry, demon-faced man, a god of death and king of the underworld. his crown taking on the form of a hat. All of these things have a few things in common. Aside from them wearing hats, all of them are associated with death and spiriting souls away to the underworld. They are the Grim Reaper throughout history. They are death. These things have been harvesting our souls since the beginning of time. Some of us just have the unfortunate circumstance of also having to be haunted by them from night to night. For most of the world, ignorance is bliss. But for people like me, we have to live with them. We have to live with their torture, like a sick game to them, like cats toying with mice before they ultimately end our lives. Because nearly every night is haunted by these things, and I get little real sleep. My days are often spent in a haze, and I feel as though I'm under the influence of some kind of drug. I feel out of it a lot, and I don't know for sure, but I swear that I've seen them in the daylight. The minions moving amongst the people, going about their daily lives. Sometimes these shadow people were seen plainly moving amongst crowds, and other times I see the same people from my dreams, the strangers that feel off to me. I don't know what's happening to me. The visitors in the night have begun to come more frequently. I've been binging on coffee in order to stay awake. I still see them, but they seem to stay just inside the dark corners of my room when I'm awake. They lurk there, almost unseen in the shadows, waiting for me to fall asleep, waiting for me to let my guard down. But I cannot. I will not. I will not let them take me. I will not be found dead in the morning. I will not fall asleep. I don't know how long it's been since I've gotten a good night's sleep. I can't relax, not even in my waking hours. They're always there, always watching me from the shadows, always in the shadows. I can now hear them whispering, their quiet murmurs leaking forth from the darkness beyond my walls. The shadow, where the wall meets wall, is like a pool of thick, black ink. A pool of blackness that connects our world to the worlds beyond. I can feel it beckoning to me. The shadows. No. The darkness itself is calling to me. It reaches for me and wants to hold me in its cold embrace. I can feel it. Everything's changed now. My walls seem outstretched and far away. The darkness can still be seen in the corner, but it feels more distant. But although it's further now, it's birthed minions to watch me. They crawl from the corner of my room as two-dimensional figures clawing forth across my walls, only to take shape and become solid beings of darkness. I feel as though I cannot fight them for much longer. I'm surrounded by their siege. I feel weak, and they've been clawing at my walls for days. Soon, they will give way to a horde of monstrous things. My walls feel even more distant, and I cannot feel the menacing presence of the evil beyond my walls. And it's not just my walls. Everything feels so far. Everything feels so distant to me. and everything appears different. I can no longer see them. I can no longer feel them. The Hatman's presence seems to have faded away. Perhaps he's gone. I can't fight it any longer. I pray that these things have lost interest in me. I pray that I may sleep. I must sleep. I must sleep.
Well, while some of you will be sleeping, I'll likely be awake, or sleeping with one eye open at the very least. But if you're in the mood for some more fear to fuel that insomnia, make sure to drop back for another terrifying tale next weekend. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.